Man, I have been playing this Nintendo Switch 2 game non-stop since I have received it, and I couldn't believe how well this game has been. In fact, this game is the only thing that I have been playing on my Switch 2 over the last few days. I feel like I'm kind of somewhat addicted to that game. And the game that I've been playing that you guys are probably asking at this point is good old Fantasy Life. And in today's video, I want to talk about how this game is the perfect Nintendo Switch 2 game to have, and something that, in my opinion, is a must-own game for Nintendo Switch 2. But before we get into that, I have to ask, we're trying to hit 22,000 subscribers by the end of July. If you haven't already, I would greatly appreciate if you guys could subscribe. Without further ado, let's jump right into talking about Fantasy Life. Man, I think it is so cool that we get the opportunity to talk about Fantasy Life, especially if you look into the history of Level 5 and how it was a company that shut down here in America, then it came back, then it shut down, then it came back, and now we got games coming out like Professor Layton's coming out, I think now 2026. And Fantasy Life is a game that I always wanted to play when it originally came out on the Nintendo 3DS. But I never got the opportunity to play that series because, interestingly enough, when it came out in America, it was released in the middle of Smash Bros. 3DS coming out. And then a few weeks later, Smash Wii U and Pokemon Alpha Sapphire and Omega Ruby was coming out. So I put my money and time into playing, Smash Bros. And Pokemon. So for me, Fantasy Life was something that never got to be played. And when I saw that this was coming to the Nintendo Switch 2, particularly within the launch day of the system, I knew I wanted to get my hands on this game because I remember how this series was beloved on the 3DS and how people were upset when originally Level 5 was shutting down about, hey, what about this game? Is this going to come to America? Like, what's going on? And I see why people love this game so much. Now, you may be asking yourself, Max, I can't help but notice you're holding a Nintendo Switch 1 version of the game. And that's actually true. I'm holding the Switch 1 version of the game because it only came out physically on the Nintendo Switch 1 in Japan. But it actually came out before the Switch 2 was released. The Switch 2 patch came out the day of the system was released, of course. But because of that, I decided to do something a little bit different just out of curiosity. I decided to play about the first 2 hours of Fantasy Life on the Nintendo Switch 1 version of the game, because I wanted to have an idea of what I was walking into once I played that Switch 2 version and see the gigantic difference between the two. And oh my goodness, the Switch 1 version, I'm not gonna lie, it was running pretty rough. That's a game that, in my opinion, I'm kind of surprised came to the Switch 1, and I think Level 5 was like, hey, this is obviously going to be a big deal for Nintendo Switch 1 users. We need to get this out. Because there was frame rate dips, visually, it kind of looked rough in areas. It was interesting, because once I purchased that Nintendo Switch 2 upgrade of the game, I only had to pay $2 for that, which was kind of incredible. But anyways, I bought that upgrade, immediately opened the game, and I saw everything so much better. From a visual standpoint, from a frame rate standpoint, everything about the Nintendo Switch 2 version of Fantasy Life was incredible, and I could not believe the difference from a Switch 1 version to Switch 2. Honestly, it just shows how exciting things are going to be looking on Nintendo Switch 2 when we have more updates to these Switch 1 games. And I think the best part about the visuals of Fantasy Life when it comes to the Switch 2 version is this is something that they're still updating. They are still wanting to make this game look better on Nintendo Switch 2. Because as the time that I'm recording this video, they dropped another update that takes the visuals and make them look even better, which is absolutely crazy because the game already looks beautiful and runs beautiful. It was something not needed, but it's awesome to show that they still care to put so much effort into something that was a $2 upgrade. But I want to talk about some of my experiences of playing Fantasy Life rather than just the visuals and frame rate. When I put this game in, I was kind of expecting more of like a somewhat Animal Crossing type like game and wasn't really expecting much. I thought it would be me exploring worlds, stuff like that. But immediately as I started the game, I was surprised by how heavy the story is and how important it is to the game. You know, I'm going to compare it to Animal Crossing. I feel like the games are a little bit similar, but when I played this, I was expecting an Animal Crossing experience, and to see something be so focused with its story, I thought it was really cool. I mean, you have full-on cutscenes going on with the game, you got dialogue that's happening non-stop. The one thing I will say that I am not liking about when it comes to Fantasy Life is when you enter that dialogue, sometimes at random points, it's voice acted. But then after you hit one page of dialogue, they stop voice acting it. You see, my issue with this is I feel like games, if you're going to have sentences be recorded, like with certain dialogue things, I feel like you should either have the full game voice acted or just no dialogue voice acted at all. And this one was very, very confusing and very weird to play when, you know, I'd be an hour into game, no voice acting happening other than like your initial like attack sounds, monster sound effects, stuff like that. And then in a cutscene, you hear like a 12 page, or not 12 page, but 12 words in voice dialogued. And then after that, no more of what was said is being voiced. I thought that threw me off and definitely did not leave a good taste in my mouth, but the story overall in Fantasy Life has been very interesting and something I was not expecting to be playing when I was playing Fantasy Life. One of my favorite things of this game, and this is the part that it gets addicting for myself to play this game, is when you're going from quest to quest. Now, I don't know if this is going to make sense at all what I'm about to say, but the type of satisfaction that I can compare playing this game from the quest to quest standpoint is if you were playing a mobile game, for example. You know, something that I would compare to as a kid, something that I played all the time was Smurf's Village. And I was building the ultimate Smurf's Village. And of course, with it being a mobile game, microtransactions. And I obviously wasn't able to play the game a lot, but whenever I got done with a quest or building something within the village, I felt so satisfied. And then the game throws something else at you. You're like, oh, you just completed this? It's time to build one of these things. Get on to it. That type of satisfaction is what's happening with Fantasy Life when it comes to completing a quest. You'll be like, oh, we're finally progressing somewhere. Oh, nope, you got to move on to this. I don't know. That's the best comparison I can make to the quest of this game. But I guess for some people that might not sound like a good thing. But to me, I think it was a great thing that it has that type of satisfaction, type of influence for you to want to come back to continue playing this game. And best of all, it doesn't have microtransactions like something Smurf's Village would have. So you can non-stop continue playing the game, going through the quest from story quests to side quests, all of that. Loads of content. That's something I want to emphasize into every point that I'm talking about here. Loads of content within this game, especially with the quests. And especially with how you want to play this game, you have hours of content just there because of the way that the roles work. They have like 7 different roles. You can become a miner to all of a sudden being a warrior. Like there is so many different paths that you can take within Fantasy Life. And I thought that it was really cool to see these different roles, especially as you progress through the world and being on different islands / worlds. It was very cool, and I love the amount of specific quests that you have depending on what guild you have. I thought it was cool, especially the fact that you can switch from guilds later into the game. Another thing that I was not expecting when playing Fantasy Life was the fact that there's a full-on combat system to where you're attacking enemies, XP grinding, collecting items from the enemies, and on top of that, hiring allies, getting allies to help you progress through those missions was something that, once again, I just was not expecting. I think when I put this game in, I just had Animal Crossing on my mind the whole time, which it still has elements of Animal Crossing, but I feel like takes it further than that. Obviously, you can't do a lot of building, stuff like that, but that was what was in my mind when I was playing this game. And this game continues to impress me and is quite literally the perfect game to have on the Nintendo Switch 2. And the reason why I say this is the perfect game for the Nintendo Switch 2, as we've talked about how there is hours and hours and hours amount of content. So many different patterns to play this game, depending on the type of life that you choose, different worlds, different quests. There is so much within the world of Fantasy Life, which I guess that's where it gets its name, because you're just living a fantasy life with the amount of different roles that there are within this game. I heavily recommend that this is something that you play on Nintendo Switch 2, because when you have games like this that have hours amount of content, I feel like it's best played on something that's a handheld device, which the Switch 2 is a handheld. You can take it on the go, and this is the perfect game to play on the go. And on top of that, it has online multiplayer. I was like, what? How much further does this game have with the amount of stuff that you can do with it? And on top of that, something that I thought was really cool is it has crossplay. So yes, that does mean if your friend owns the PlayStation version of Fantasy Life, you can still play with them. In fact, I think that is really cool. The only gripe that I have about this, that I feel like would be cool if somehow, some way they could have implemented this, and I know a lot of games don't do this, but I feel like this should change. I feel like this should be something that would be really cool, that would help influence both the player and your friend to want to play through the story. Because a lot of times with games like this, some people don't care about doing the stories. They want to just go full on in with the side quests. And I feel like it would be cool if they would have implemented it to where you can do story progression with your friend into Fantasy Life. I don't know how that would have worked, but I feel like the fact that they have like an ally system built into the game, they could have done something to where you were able to continue through the story with this game. It's something that I wish Xenoblade Chronicles X had. That was something that I talked heavily about when I played the game, that I feel like the big missed opportunity with that game was going further with its online play. And Fantasy Life definitely goes through a lot with its online play, with having so much content within online with what you can do with your friends. But I feel like the big thing that should have been implemented somehow, some way, was story progression. Looking at the Nintendo Switch 2 lineup that we already have for this system, I know that I mentioned before in my review that I didn't feel like there was a true big single player game out there for a lot of players, because even though I love Cyberpunk, I realized that that game came out 5 years ago. So some people probably had already played that game. But I feel like having a game like Fantasy Life is something that I can heavily recommend for everyone to pick up, and I feel like that's the big game that Nintendo was missing from its catalog. I feel like also that even though this game came out on launch day, it's not getting talked about enough, and I don't understand why, because this is quite literally an amazing game. And honestly, I'm throwing it out there, I feel like it could be a Game of the Year contender. I know it's not going to get nominated for that. For myself, though, it is a contender due to the amount of stuff that you can do, how fun it can get, the amount of hours of content that's in this game. You can tell that Level 5 greatly appreciated this IP and wanted this to be a special game for everyone. Which leads me to my score. How do I review Fantasy Life? What do I rate it? Is it something I recommend? Well, obviously, I'm going to heavily recommend it to you. As I said before, it is the perfect Nintendo Switch 2 game. I feel very impressed by the Nintendo Switch 2 upgrade that they did, and the fact that they still want to do so much more for this game. And the fact that there's still free content coming into the game when we're only 1 month to this being out for the Switch 2 is pretty incredible. And I hope that this game continues to get bigger and bigger, as it's, again, the perfect thing. And I'm hopeful that they do something with the game physically for over here in America, because I know it's been selling out like crazy in Japan. So I think if they brought this game over here physically to America, I think that would help the sales numbers. I don't think it would drastically change anything, but I feel like that would definitely boost it. But from a scale to 1 to 10, I am giving Fantasy Life a 10 out of 10. As I mentioned before, I don't really have any issues with the game. As I continue to play through this game, I'm just amazed. The only thing that I would say that I had issue with was the fact that some things, or I say some things, like 99% of the game with the dialogue is not voiced, but there's like that 1% of the game at random times that has dialogue, which just to me throws me off completely. I wish there was just no voice acting at that part. I don't know if that sounds weird, but it's a problem with me, and I feel like the online progression story system would have been very nice to somehow get implemented. But for $62 plus tax, I heavily recommend that you pick this up. Now, if you're a Switch 1 player and don't mind frame rate dips or the visuals being that, because the visuals are a big difference on Switch 1 to Switch 2, I would say that this is still a great game, but there is definitely issues with that frame rate, so expect a lot of that. I still think it's a great game, but I think really the best experience, the only way you should really be playing this game is on Nintendo Switch 2. But guys, I definitely want to hear from you. How do you feel about Fantasy Life? Are you a fan of it? Are you still playing it? Did it make sense when I made the mobile game progression comparison with Smurfs Village? Hey, I'm sure some of y'all in the comments played Smurfs Village, right? Or is that just a me thing? That was a fun game. They should bring that back. Is that still around? Guys, I have been talking for way too much. Make sure to backslash that subscribe button, like the video, check out the Twitter, Discord, Instagram, all that good stuff in the description below. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.